Oh, I forgot to start the music, but music going and we're live, so.
Oh no. I was just watching the speed draw from last week's art because um I really only get to get an objective reflection on my art after I forget like what I was thinking when I was drawing it.
Yeah.
So that's how I was feeling. I was like, well, maybe I'll feel better about this week's art in like a couple days when I forget the process that happened. It's you know, you don't want to know how the sauce is made, I guess.
Yeah, you never want to know. Too much of
You
a burden.
never want to know.
Um, oh,
Um,
some people are
but
already
I
here in the
hope,
chat.
oh good. I hope that you guys enjoy the furry art this week. I have an explanation, sort of.
Believe me, I
I
have an
just
explanation.
Yeah, well, William and I were talking, and I just kind of liked, like focusing on the sense of like how Lisa sees everybody as like kind of caricatures of themselves, in my opinion. Um, it's not the most, she doesn't see them in the most nuanced, and diverse way, you know what I mean? And so I was thinking, we were just thinking about like the Beastars characters. um,
Yeah.
and how they have really intense personalities that are like greatly influenced by what animals they are. So her view is a little dehumanizing. Exactly. So obviously we have our vulpine grin. So Lisa's the fox. And then Gru is a wolf, and um Rachel is a dog. And we had to think for a little bit about what the hell to make Regent because he's such a freak. But I
Somehow I
think
became
Lizard turned out.
convinced he was a lizard. I saw this picture of the classic picture of the lizard lounging with its on its little elbow and there's sun all over it. Like, I was like, this is perfect. This is Regent.
Vale said, I have to watch with sound off, so I am just interpreting this to mean Vic is a furry. It's okay. Yeah. Um, this is like a first real furry art I've done, and I don't think it went too bad
No, I think it's
for
good.
that
I
being the case.
I really like it. You seemed like not so hot on it when we were talking while you were sort of finishing it up, but I don't know. I think it's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
it's it's because I think part of it is like yeah, Region is the only non-mammal. I compare myself to like Emily's art often, and she is like really like her
Yeah.
specialty is like anthropomorphic animals. So, it's easy to feel down on myself when I have so much to look up to.
Right, right, yeah. Um I uh I really like the fact that Bran ended up as like a Lego she-wolf.
Yeah, we were kind of throwing around the idea of doing being like more abstract than doing him as a Gru, which I don't even know what like lore that comes from.
The
Do you
problem
know?
is, well, it's from the game Zork, I think initially, or maybe something older
Mhm.
than that. Actually, no, I think it's from a book from before Zork. I remember I read that while I was doing one of the early arc scripts at the beginning of the year. Um so that was like, yeah, I think it's from the 80s though. I don't think it's super old. And
Mhm.
then it seems like every time, like when we search for pictures of like what does a Gru look like, I thought we were gonna kind of find one
Too
thing.
diverse.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was kind of everything. And the thing that made me think of the wolf was uh it was like a weird Gru that looked like an extended leg wolf thing. I don't know. Uh,
Mhm.
There was one of the ones I sent you though, where I was like, this is
Yeah,
pretty cool
and I
looking.
think it makes sense with the Rachel and and Brian dynamic that he would be a wolf and she's a dog because it's like she like kind of does feel that like she has to like submit to him or whatever, but like really doesn't like it. And they still have like a weird communication gap, even though they do have honestly like kind of aligned like views of each other, you know what I mean?
And like mostly of, I mean, the way that they view the world is obviously very different in like big ways, but in terms of the way that they only care about their like circle of influence, and that they like out of sight out of mind, like that kind of thing, and like they're willing to let a
Mhm.
lot slide. um
Yeah, and that they are very loyal to the people they're loyal to, and they will like just kill anyone else.
right, yeah.
Um, yeah, Vale said that they were lying and they actually are listening,
Oh
which is
my
good
god.
because the only visual aspect of the stream is at the very beginning.
Yes.
Um, I think Gru is the only Undersider who doesn't have a canon comparison to a non-human. Well, I was thinking about like what Taylor would be in this. Um,
Because I don't think she'd be a bug. I mean, it'd be
I don't
funny
think
to
she'd be
draw
a
her as a
bug.
bug, but
Yeah, it would be funny to draw her as a bug at one point, but like in like Beastar's world,
hmm,
she'd have to be something kind of like
I feel like she would
hmm.
be something that's like normally not as threatening. Like she in the Beastars dynamic, she would be a an herbivore.
Yes, she is more like a Louis kind of.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
She could be like a fawn or something like that, and it would kind of work if you had like a very like slender, tall, awkward um deer kind of thing.
Hmm.
Butterfly with a stinger and a gun. An anteater. Anteater is actually kind of good for Taylor. She'd be too small though. We'll have to. Hmm. I feel like we're on the right path though.
The most important question in the world is what animal would Taylor be in Beastars?
You guys think it. You guys think it out. I don't know if you guys have all watched Beastars, but if you haven't, you definitely should.
So Greg's watched Beastars, but I have no idea for our main audience members here, Valen, 2 plus 4 times 5.
Yeah, I really hope you. If you haven't, you should take your Saturday and watch
When
season one.
when
But
I
I have
watched
seen Zootopia since she was 4 times 5. Okay, very different.
Yeah. When I watched Beastars the first time, it was on your recommendation. I turned on a couple episodes and I literally watched all of season 1 by the next day. Like I watched a bit more than half of it in that night, stayed up late, then woke up early and watched the rest of it before we started working.
So it's so good. I won't keep talking about these stars because I won't stop. So we'll have to change the subject.
Okay, I do want to hit a couple chats in case we missed them. The Greg saying appealing not just to furries here, but the scaly demographic too. I think that's
Hmm.
pretty funny. And then IIRC Wildbow or in IRC maybe. Wildbow confirmed that Gru didn't name himself after the Zork thing. Yeah, I think he's naming himself after the word Gru and like the subword of gruesome. um, but
Oh, if I remember correctly.
if I remember correctly, okay. Sorry, I'm just not.
I've never heard that one either,
Yeah,
but I just
I'm not a cool kid. And then what is the stick bug thing? It looks like a praying mantis, but without the claws. Um, stick bug. I mean, I
a
know what stick
stick
bugs
bug.
are, but I'm trying to think of a stick bug without the claws. Um, anyway, I'm getting too caught up thinking about stick bugs.
I know, we're thinking too much about bee stars and stick bugs and what were the yeah, remind everybody of the audience participation.
Yes, the audience participation is for this chapter at the end is how would Taylor fare at integrating into the Undersiders' initial group rather than joining later? So yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I did pre-read a sentence or two of Vale's answer, but only enough to think I might disagree with this, so I should
We'll
read it at
save
the
it. Yeah.
time, a live read. Um, and then for themes, we didn't have any like concrete stuff that we could think of per se, but Lisa being obsessed with Taylor is kind of like a thing when I don't know if it's quite a theme, but when she's looking at the um battlefield, she keeps noticing Taylor like more than anything else. She's so focused on Taylor, even with everything else going on, which is especially noticeable because it's the first time we've seen Taylor from outside her own perspective. Um,
Bill said, "Oh no, should I edit it?" No, don't don't edit your
no,
opinion. If we argue something and then you change your opinion, then you can edit it like in your mind, but it you should keep it for now.
yeah. Um, and then the
Yeah,
other
the other
theme.
like thing we noticed a lot was, which we already touched on, is just Lisa really, really simplifying people and things too much. Like she just kind of gets to a point and it seems like her power is repeating herself. So she's like, I guess that's all there is for this thing, instead of thinking like, I've run out of information.
Right, right, yeah. And it's almost it's weird because you maybe she does it to like try and flatten out people so that she's not spending as much effort with her power when she's around them or something. But
Mhm.
yeah, it doesn't. It maybe helps her in some ways, but it certainly hurts her in many ways to
Yeah.
have this kind of view.
Yeah, it's
Veilson.
very different from Taylor in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that Taylor will always be trying to learn more and more about people.
Right, right, yeah, and we had talked about that. How like Taylor, when she learns Rachel's mindset, she like buys a book to read a book to try and get better at dealing with Rachel. So, um, even though it's a real fucking nerd thing to do of Taylor, to read a
Sure
book,
is.
then it's still showing like um actionable, like she's putting in real effort and undergoing tasks to improve the relationship. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Vale says, woo, because I was completely correct in my post. Good thing I don't have to edit it. um,
Eh.
um, oh, weird writing stuff. We wanted to note that, like, this is another one of those chapters where the perspective changes, but it's like, weird how it happens in kind of our opinion. Um, it
Yeah, it's definitely not as bad as not that the Wards chapter is bad, but like that perspective was so like all over the place in my opinion and ambiguous. This one it's just like it starts out from an outside perspective on Lisa, and then by the end of that like little section, then it shifts into like full Lisa.
right, and it's even weird because like it feels like it should change at the paragraph break marker thing, like the scene transition mark, but it doesn't even end there. It kind of continues. Well, it's like it switches perspective maybe two sentences before that, two of his like mini
Mhm.
paragraphs, and it's just like okay, but yeah. So I think that this may have been caused because this was a donation bonus interlude, and maybe he was rushed. I'm not trying to shit on the chapter too much. It just felt like it didn't quite land like he wanted.
Yeah. It to me it's like it just felt bad because I'm like, oh, you're taking time away from like getting to know Lisa and her perspective more. It was still like a good little segment, but I don't know if it was really I don't think that it added more than it would have if it was just straight up from Lisa's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
especially because Lisa gives us insight into what other people are thinking already. So I don't know, it just didn't seem
I
super
think he
necessary.
didn't want to show the way the power worked because we get that whole section and then the whole first section with the in the Leviathan fight where she's looking over at Taylor. She doesn't use her power through either of those two segments. It's not until the third segment where she's back in the shop that uh, that she uses her power. We see it go off, and it's like a different style. And then once we're back at the Leviathan fight, kind of a while later, because that chunk is the largest chunk, I think. No, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Well, anyway, so it's one of the longer chunks when she's getting hauled out of the store, and then she's back on the battlefield and she's using it, and it's going a mile a minute. But anyway.
They also said this is one of their favorite chapters in the early arc, which is interesting. I was gonna say like, well, at some point we'll definitely need to do a interlude ranking because for me this is probably one of the weakest ones.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't think it's on like the level of quite like I don't know. I guess around the way I feel about the Victoria interlude, where like
mhm.
before I had a really low opinion of that, but I actually like hold it in much higher regard now, and I like this one a little better than when we did than before. Like now that I've
Mhm.
close read it a couple times in a row, but
Same here.
it's just they're still kind of lower than like the Gregor interlude's like really good. The Danny interlude's really good. Um, I think maybe the Wards one is the weakest one we've seen so far.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll have to throw the Victoria one on the bottom, but
Okay, really?
I don't know. I may have to reread those two like
Because
side by side.
it wasn't until I was doing the close read for the Victoria one that I really had been like, okay, this is kind of cool. And like when I had done the audiobook,
Hmm.
I think that the read for that chapter is really bad in the audiobook, to be honest, but it just is what it is at a certain point.
Yeah, it is what it is. 2 plus 4 times 5 says that nothing can top the Brutus interlude, but
Yeah, you and I are not as big on that as the bulk of the fandom. I do like it, but it's just not I didn't fall in love with it the same way other people did. I think other people are more interested in the gimmick of the chapter, and I thought it was a little hmm I
if you are more of a doggo person.
I have a dog in this very room, but it's just something about I think I think I'm slightly off put by the idea that I think dog psychology is different than he had imagined when he was writing the story. And I don't think
Yeah,
it
that's
takes a
that's
lot
true.
away from the story overall, but when it's the whole focus of the chapter,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's been like more information that we've learned about dog psychology and like the things that were like more popular in 2011. We're not super accurate.
Yeah. Vale, we're fake fans. That's why we
We're
do this stream.
Dude, I'm a Brutus hater. Brutus is the worst, actually, of all the dogs.
Oh
I'm an
no.
Angelica's my favorite,
Okay.
but let's get into it.
Yeah.
So we see Lisa, who is unnamed at this point because we're seeing her from the outside perspective. She's got greasy ass hair with blue highlights in it, which is cute. I wonder at what point she lost that look. I guess probably when she started going out in costume, she was like, I probably shouldn't just have straight up blue streaks in my hair.
Yeah, I think that would have been poor planning.
Yeah. So
And that's actually
she's
on the
wearing.
art here, if anyone didn't notice that. That has the blue tipped ears, cheeks, and then blue tail ish.
Yeah, she's so cute.
Yes.
Um, She is wearing like cheap looking thrifted clothes because she's a hipster, I guess. Just before her time. And she's flipping through a rack of
Only reason, not
uh
because she's unhoused.
yeah. She's in one of the boardwalk shops, like one of the really expensive clothing boutiques. And she's just kind of looking through clothes. Or it says that she's pretending to look through clothes, which is interesting that that's the perspective of Tasha.
Well, but that's again like that's why it's so weird because it doesn't feel like it's Tasha's perspective all the way. It
Yeah,
feels
it
like
seems like it's the truth.
we get slight insight into her mindset, but it's not um
It's not 100%.
yeah, it's very strange like perspective choice, I think, of like the
Yeah.
middle ground. And again, the times we object to it the most are like here and in the interlude for arc 3 where it's just so muddy like where you're supposed to be. Are we just hovering in the scene? Like
hmm
yeah.
It does feel like that's what it is. We're just like a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
So there's two ladies working the shop named Tasha and Daniela. And they are displeased seeing Lisa here, because she's like obviously not the kind of people they're wanting to attract at the store. And it like comes off like she wouldn't even be able to like purchase anything. So Tasha approaches Lisa and she's got like her fake customer service smile, like, "Can I help you?" Um, and Lisa's like, "Nah," and just keeps looking through the clothes. So Tasha like immediately gets annoyed and she like flips so fast. It's like so funny, like how quickly
Oh
she's
yeah.
like, as soon as she's dismissed, she's like, "Actually, you're poor." Um, she's like, she lets Lisa know that she wouldn't even be able to afford the clothes. One of the items she had pushed past was a $4,000 Fendi jacket. Um, I don't know. I guess I've never been in a store like this. So
I've never been in a store where they let you touch something that's $4,000.
yeah, exactly. Like, I think that at like actual luxury shops, a lot of the time you're not allowed to touch things. Like, they have people come out and will hold them up for you if you want to look at it. At least that's what I've heard from like YouTubers and stuff.
They have
Um,
their own Richard Iowade to Herbert Sims and like hold up all the clothes
mhm.
for the Cascons of the world.
Yeah. And I've even heard that like if you want to try something on, they will have a item that they let people try
Like a
on.
sample, basically.
Yeah, like a sample, but you wouldn't be buying that exact version. It might be like a different color or a different size or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Lisa like Lisa replies with "No shit, it's ugly," which is savage. Tasha is nervous that maybe some of the other customers heard, and she looks around to make sure that nobody's like reacting, because it's both insulting and crass. Tasha threatens to call one of the boardwalk enforcers, who I guess they both understand that like the enforcers are, as far as I can tell, Tasha understands this as well, that the enforcers are seem to be like violent and like regularly like assault people that they try to remove and stuff. Uh they at one point they described they like will throw them off the pier, not into water, but into sand,
Yeah,
which is also just so insane. Um
I don't know
which
how
I
they
guess
didn't kill a bunch of people off like that. You know?
Yeah, it seems like I'm sure that some people like died or got grievously injured, but maybe just like one or two, and then they just covered it up because this is obviously like a really, really well-off area of town.
Right, right.
Bill said sounds like standard mall security. Um, They probably did kill at least a few. Yeah, I agree. I don't think that's, especially when it's like young teenagers that
It's
they're doing that too.
it's so funny because I don't know. It's not like Boise is like a crazy poor area, but the mall
Mhm.
here, like I can't even when I picture it, I can't think of what the security uniforms look like because I don't think I've seen the security the times I've been there. So like,
I did get in trouble with security once at the Boise Mall.
hmm,
Um, but it was like me and my friends, it was me, Emily, and Sarah, like
mm-hmm,
were we decided to like climb into one of the like little kids car things that like rocks around or whatever. Um, and it we were inside it and so we couldn't really hear outside of it because there was like music playing, but when we got out there was like a Karen yelling at us and she had called the mall security guard over and she was like, "I am so disappointed in you girls." And it was awful.
that's funny.
Um, but yeah, he didn't do anything. He just was standing there because somebody called him over. Like he just looked kind of annoyed. Um, luckily, I didn't get thrown off a pier 20 feet above the
Well, I was
sand.
just thinking like obviously sand is a lot lighter than like a floor material, but that just sounds like throwing them from the first floor of the Boise Mall to the second floor, or I mean second to first rather. And I'm just like,
Oh my gosh,
Jesus,
exactly, like
it's like
right
a
in the
murder.
middle area.
Yeah, exactly through those
Um,
gaps.
Sigma said the people they killed were poor people. They hardly count as people. Phil said, "I'm also disappointed in what you were thinking, young lady." Shakes finger disappointment. Yeah, I literally was like close to tears. We were probably like 15 at the time. Um, So at the end of her like chewing out Lisa, she calls her a little idiot, which Lisa lets her know she really hates being called stupid. And then she tells her to shut the fuck up. Um,
Yeah, I think
I don't
that's
know. I
great.
think it's funny when Lisa like she's just being cruel without using her power, and that's like so much funnier than when she's tattletaling.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I like the whole like change in tone. How she like the way she's navigating this conversation, like she takes control in like a snap. Because it would be so
hmm,
easy for that move to fail if she cuts her off with something else, and then the other girl starts like talking over her or whatever. Um, I
yeah.
think she really nails the moment.
Yeah, she's really effective here. And like at this point, she, as far as we can tell from the outside-ish perspective, she starts tattletaling. She says Tasha's breath smells like vomit and candy, and that Tasha's boyfriend is cheating on her regardless of how thin she tries to get. And she's like, if you hurry right now, you can catch him. Go. And Tasha's just so like shook to her core that she just does it, which also crazy. Tasha, I mean, obviously Tasha's like a little out of touch with reality, so it makes sense that she would just listen as this person starts like spewing all of her like secrets.
Tasha, secret shitty cape.
Yeah. Um, so Lisa hides her grin from the other cashier and continues looking through the stuff. And then you added a note here that like this is at the point where you're like, oh my gosh, it's Tattletale. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you like hadn't picked it up at that point, you obviously know. Because who else grins?
Who else has
Nobody.
a vulpine smile?
It's like later when we see Clock Blocker out of costume, which we've already learned that he's ginger. And we don't know it's Clock Blocker, but Taylor's like, a ginger person walked up to me, and I'm like, oh, obviously Clock Blocker.
There's only one ginger.
There's only one ginger in all of Worm. Um, Sigma said, who else is literally a fox person? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, Lisa thinks to herself that she might get some bad karma for taking advantage of Tasha's insecurities, but it was a necessary evil, and also Tasha was a bitch, which is true. Um, I did think that that comment from Lisa is interesting, that she seemingly believes in karma because she's not the most responsible with her karma if she thinks that's true.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense that that she feels like she does really well for Taylor and like tries really hard to take care of her, and like maybe that makes her feel like she evens out her effect on the world or something.
Maybe. I think that maybe it's one of those things where she doesn't necessarily believe in karma, but it's just it's like I don't necessarily believe in anything, but sometimes I still look over my shoulder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Um, Turtle Cat said that Greg is clock blocker confirmed.
Oh, yeah, I think that must be true. Since the only ginger
Since
here.
he's ginger.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I guess stupid Emma is ginger, but like being a ginger girl in Worm is different than being a ginger guy
Ginger
in Worm.
boy. I'm trying to think of any other characters, but none are springing right to mind. I feel like there probably are others, but like
There's Auburn, like Rachel
tons of
and
Auburn.
Rachel and Amy are both like Auburn leaning, but they seem like more like my hair color, like brown-ish and mostly brown, sort of red.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, probably.
Um,
I'm a lot more like that.
so Lisa is like looking at the other cashier, Daniela, and her power tells her that she's new to the job and she's really anxious working on her own. Um, and then her power starts like derailing and giving her info on like the fact that Daniela isn't allowed to have smoke breaks because it might make the clothes smell bad. And then she takes a moment to center herself. And at this point, we learn her power is still new and that she can only like go out and do this specific activity like this for a couple hours every couple weeks, which is like that's crazy, like, how much that has changed, in the span of what, like, a year or 9 months or something?
Yeah, and I think the reason it expands a lot in the I think it's 11 months leading up to Taylor joining is because they're getting into not only conflict but conflict with other capes, which is kind of what like hones powers, it like sort of sharpens the blade, so to speak. And
Mhm.
so I think that she's got a little bit of that, but then once Taylor joins the group, I feel like it grows in leaps and bounds, like her power, because she's getting herself consistently closer to the mindset of the trigger event. So she's
Mhm.
able to um, align better with her power, I think.
Yeah, um yeah, poor Lisa. But it does seem like things are like her tolerance is improving, but it's like so slow that it kind of drives her crazy. So, luckily though, the cashier is prioritizing like trying to get a hold of other staff rather than calling security. I think it's funny that she is unconcerned about the fact that like Tasha goes to talk to Lisa and then just runs out of the building, and then she's like not worried about Lisa at all.
Yeah.
um I don't know, maybe she had an emergency. So Lisa turns her attention to a man in his 30s and he's waiting by the changing rooms for his girlfriend. And she starts like purposely using her power on him. We know that like Lisa's power is always on, but I guess it's like different when she's really focusing it. Like that's what strains her.
I think she blocks it out most of the time, the way that
Mm.
Taylor at the start of the book blocks out all the bug information. And then
True.
as she slowly like, because she has the same shit. She basically gets thinker. I mean, she doesn't get thinker headaches in the same way that other thinkers do per se, but
Mhm.
she is unable to handle the information overload, and she gets clear like negative effect and can't focus on shit when it's coming into
Mhm.
her. So
Yeah. So her power starts telling her like a bunch of random shit that she doesn't care about. So she kind of has to stop and refocus again. And she starts again. So she knows he's a confident military man. How would he choose a 4-digit PIN? And I wrote phone passcode here, but I guess she never really says that. She's focused on how he's using the phone to figure it out. But I think that she's trying to figure out his ATM PIN,
yeah, I was
right?
gonna say I think that she wants to steal his card and know his pin, and then go use it at an ATM for a withdrawal that she
Mhm.
can do just at within a single shot. And I know that there's
Mhm.
limits on that kind of stuff, but like my brain says that her power would tell her what the limit was for a given card.
Mhm.
Like
Do
especially
you
if
want to
she's
read this?
at the ATM, I feel like she could get that.
Yeah, for sure. You can read this excerpt. This is her power going off.
Yeah. Confident and military trained. Goes out of his way to keep numbers random. Looks early 30s. Born late 70s. Tendency to go with higher number to start. 8 or 9. Mid range numbers like 4, 5, or 6. Then high, low, no repeating numbers. Dressing in darker jacket, pants, trimmed beard, conservative. Number will be even, even, odd, odd, or odd, odd, even, even.
Um, so she's realizing like she hasn't analyzed enough about him yet to actually get the passcode. So she kind of looks at him further and realizes that he is using his phone with his left hand, and this gets her the pin that she needs, which is 8471. I don't ever understand how she gets numbers, but it's fine.
I think part of it is that, like, we don't necessarily need to be able to interpret what her power is using to get that, but like maybe her power on the phone screen is using like residue, like hand oil residue and stuff from his thumb, and like seeing the spots that have been pressed the most, or like the screen is like micrometer difference in length because he's rubbed more of the screen off from the spots he touched the most. you know
Mhm.
there's I feel
Yeah.
like there's so many uh things that it could be. 2 plus 4 times 5 says I'm left-handed and I use my phone with my right hand. Am I weird? Definitely.
Yes,
But also
that's
you said
weird.
gingerbread earlier, and to me, gingerbread would be a good cape name. I don't know what their power would be, but feel free to speculate in the chat.
Oh no, with his arch nemesis, the Muffin Man. Um, you can read the excerpt here.
Yes. And we can roast Lisa in a second. Southpaw, confident, wallet in left jacket pocket. He was distracted. She abandoned the coat rack and approached the man, being careful to stay directly behind him in his blind spot. His jacket was unbuttoned, and in the end, the pocket was draped beside him on the and the end with the pocket was draped beside him on the bench. The pocket facing her. Easy grab. Wallet in left jacket pocket. Intended to help mask presence of gun holstered at left hip.
It's just so funny that she was not paying attention. She's never paying attention to the right stuff. For real.
She should walk into the room and be like, "How many nugs do they have? Are there
Yeah.
guns everywhere?
Do
Am
they
I?"
have guns? Do they want to kill me? So Lisa like physically does a 180 when she realizes he has a gun, which is really funny. But as she turns to leave, an enforcer enters the shop. So she turns back, and then the boyfriend character casually like moves and places himself in the way of the exit. And this to her concludes that they work together. The enforcer is not a real enforcer. The girlfriend exits the changing room, and she's like chatting it up, but it's clear that she's also in cahoots, and this is a trap. So Lisa bolts and shoves a display on the enforcer. And I pulled this quote for no reason. It was a miscalculation. He didn't care about the sunglasses. Which was my favorite line this chapter for sure. I guess I assumed she pushed the thing on him to try to injure him, not because he'd be like, "Oh no, the sunglasses."
Well, if he was
Um,
a real enforcer, she might be able to, in some way, like, does she already know he's
yeah, she already said that he's not an
okay?
enforcer,
Well,
but
then never mind. I don't really have a way to excuse this.
it was a miscalculation.
Yeah.
So he strikes her in the stomach, which triggers some like unnecessary info from her power about him. She's like, "Oh, I bet this is his whole backstory." As she crumples to the ground, I just think it's like really funny when like her power gets like randomly triggered by something, and I can imagine how inconvenient it is.
Yeah.
Um, so the cashier starts freaking out, mostly about the sunglasses because she did care about them. And the fake enforcer says that his supervisor will just dock it from his pay and like calm the fuck down. So Lisa tries to tell Daniela the truth, but can't get the words out because he yoinks her to her feet by the back of her collar, so he's like choking her. Um, and he pats Lisa down and like pretends that she had a knife. Like I don't know, he does like some sleight of hand, so
He
he ends
palms
up
the knife and
patting her.
then he's like, "Oh
Yeah, he
my
palms the
god."
knife and then he's like, "Oh my God, she had a knife." To like frighten the salesperson into
Real
basically
cop
like,
move.
yeah, total cop, dude. He's not even a cop though. I guess he's a military person.
He's some trained person. He's probably ex-military because he's one of Coyle's people. I wanted to pull out this part that I forgot to grab, but it's from this segment. It's a team of three, each with guns, all of whom were after her, and then the power just says trap, and then she says no kidding to herself aloud. I just think that's funny.
Did you say it out loud? Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I
she
didn't
says
catch
that out
that.
loud. And then the thing that is like the little quote thing from when she gets hit is striking solar plexus, trained in martial arts, striking to inflict maximum pain, disabling, and then it cuts.
Bill said Lisa's power is a 1990 hacker's version of machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Greg says her power helpfully provides information on how badly he's beating her ass.
Yes.
Yeah. So Lisa's power tells her that the fake enforcer has killed before, and he hauls her out of the store. And she's like, "Well, I didn't do anything worth killing for. Like, I've just been stealing money from people's bank accounts. Thousands and thousands of dollars, as far as we know. Um, which I guess she's just been saving that money. So a migraine has started up among all of the hubbub, and it's threatening to knock her out if she pushes too hard. So she's trying to like preserve her power right now. The tourists around the shop are mildly curious. They're just like, "Huh, that's weird." And then the locals are like completely ignoring the situation. Tells us a lot about Brockton Bay in general, you know.
Good old BB.
He takes her to an alley and shoves her like face first against a wall. And Lisa tries to bribe him with all her cold hard cash. And he doesn't really respond well to that. So they wait for a short time until the fake boyfriend and girlfriend from the shop come up. Do you want to read this in an English accent?
Yes. Marcus, you know that's no way to handle a lady. The girlfriend spoke. She had a posh English accent. When she spoke again, the accent remained, but the upper class lilt was gone. Her voice serious. Turn her around.
So the British woman holds a phone up to Lisa's ear, and Lisa's like, "Sup?" because she's always trying so hard to be cool. It's annoying. Um,
So funny.
so somebody who we obviously know is Coil because he is the only one in this universe with a smooth, silky voice. Um,
Smooth and silky.
yeah, he says he hopes his soldiers weren't too rough with her, because he wants to buy her services. He takes the chance to flex that he knows Lisa's real name, which we haven't learned that she even has a fake name up till now. But her original name was Sarah Livesey. Um, but I don't know. It doesn't really matter in the story ever again. So,
Yeah,
um,
other people who learn the information, like there's at least one other character I can think of who like taunts her by calling her Sarah.
oh yeah.
But
Word choice, buy versus hire, large amounts of money involved. Word choice, buy versus make an offer, not really a negotiation. I like that. I wish we had seen more of that from her power. Like, it seems like that's a specific thing that her power might focus on is the word choice people use to try to figure out what things that you can really figure out with your own brain, but her power just tells her.
right, right. It offloads so much of the work because a lot of the things she could learn and a lot of the interpersonal stuff is stuff that she could pick up on if she was like really in tune with people and really good at that specifically, but she's kind of not. Uh,
Yeah, that's the thing is like Taylor could have thought that same thing and it wouldn't be out of character. But this is literally her superpower.
right, yeah.
So, so flash forward and Lisa is arriving at the train yards, which is um so well illustrated here. To meet the rest of the group that Quail has found for her. Guru calls her out for being late and for lacking a costume. He is incredibly more
He's a real douche in
harsh.
this first meeting.
Yeah, he is like really, really intense. More intense than we've seen him even in like their super villain meetings and stuff, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I
Um,
think he hasn't
so
really. I think that up to this point, because he's been active for like 2 years or whatever, maybe. I think it's that a total of 3 years from the time that Taylor researches him, but he's active for like 2 years before this meeting, and he's probably gone to like meetups before to go get hired. Basically, like he's the kind of guy who would go to Somers Rock on his own and just be like, "Who's doing a job?"
yeah, that's true. Um, I don't know how much of this is like just him putting on a front or whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
like
Well, I think
if
his
he really was.
I think he's got more rough edges, and I also think that he's trying to put up a big show at the same time.
Yeah,
So it's like compounded.
yeah. So he calls her out for being late and that she's not wearing a costume. Her power notes a few things about his darkness, which like we already know because she just tells us, when she meets Taylor and stuff, as well as his bossiness. Um, she says falls
Which
back
Taylor
on
loves.
She says falls back on order, rules, self-discipline in times of stress, which is interesting because that is very Taylory. Um, it's not even that she falls back on those things in times of stress. That's just how she falls back. And then in times of stress, she like breaks all those things.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
Lisa says she doesn't have a costume and that she'd figured out she figured she'd be like the guy in the chair kind of role with the team. And Rachel like very quickly shoots that down and she's like, "You gotta get your hands dirty like the rest of us."
Yeah.
Um, Elisa's power tells us things we mostly know about Rachel, and the fact that she's a dog. But the things of note, I think, are that she's haunted by demons and she says she's unhappy with the status quo, which I think unhappy with the status quo is interesting because that's not a way that I would have thought to define Rachel at all.
Right.
Um,
Right. But I couldn't disagree with it either.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with it. It just that would normally mean something very, very different than what we see from Rachel.
Hmm.
Um, so Lisa says her power isn't great in confrontation, and Gru tells her she needs to figure it out. She looks to Regent, who agrees with Lisa that this is going to be fun. And Lisa quickly assesses that he is a sociopath.
Yeah.
Which this is the first time that's been said. Um, and I took it as truth. It sounds like when you read that, you were like, I think you didn't just like take that at face value.
Well, okay, so I took it at face value. The thing is, it's just I didn't get it until later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I guess
I know
like
she
there's
says
like
that, but like
a
I still
softer
didn't like
version of a
get it.
sociopath.
Yeah.
There's like there's like a sociopath like you see in BBC Sherlock, and then there's like a sociopath sociopath.
The thing is that like it's just the surface level Alec, and even what I felt like we could see below the surface on my first read through
Mhm.
I would never have expected um when we see from his perspective like how his interiority like is, I guess.
Yeah. Man, I'm so excited to get to Regent's interlude. That one's definitely one of my favorites.
Hmm. I think
Not
that's a
not
crowd favorite
Brutus.
too. I think people really really like that one.
Yeah.
So but yeah.
So that was all of the flashback moments. This was like integrated throughout, but whatever. It more for dramatic effect than really any like value that it's bringing. So back in modern day, we're starting right at the end of the last chapter. So she also experiences the clap of thunder while they're teleported outside. So Leviathan is in the midst of the boardwalk. The gang comments that everyone, including Legend, is out of their depth here, and Gru commands, "None of us are dying." Which is like we immediately see like such a big difference with Gru. Like he just doesn't. He's just so much of a kinder and like more loving person than he comes off
Well,
at the start.
I also don't know how fast it developed, but like by the time of the story start, he and Lisa are like tight, I feel like.
Yeah, they have lots of problems with each other, but I think that they care about each other very deeply.
Yeah.
Um, Vale says I love this interlude because it's the first time we really get time really getting to know Lisa. Same with Regents. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, like our problem is literally that like Vic and I don't feel like we get to know Lisa enough, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
I wanted more. 2 + 4 × 5 says, on the note of Alec being a sociopath, one of my friends is on Arc 4 of Worm and asked him to guess who the second murderer on the team is. And he said, could be anyone except Alec.
when we
That's
ask
funny.
Vic about, or not Vic, when we ask Quinn about his perspective on like characters and stuff, he said like Alec is one of the people he's most interested in. Lisa, I think his like bar none favorite character, but uh Alec is always the next person he brings up.
Hmm. And
Um,
Alec was my like number one from the start. Um,
I could tell.
yeah. But just some characters were like are my favorite now, but like from the start I felt very neutral or like
No,
whatever about them.
I know, but I mean, as you were reading it, we were talking throughout, and you read it
Hmm.
over like a fairly long time scale, so we had many conversations each arc
Yeah.
basically. Um, and don't want to let Greg's comment get lost in the shuffle. Says, well, of course, it's not often we get to see the world from the lizard perspective. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, Vale said, I love Taylor from chapter one and Lisa from the first time she spoke in Tattletale mode. I did love, I mean, I didn't love Taylor from chapter one because I was like, Taylor.
I feel like
She's
you
like,
had a
oh,
real.
everyone's so much hotter than me. And then like chapter two, I was like, oh, okay.
I feel like younger people that I've talked to about this usually don't take to Taylor as quickly, and people like
Hmm.
my age and up, I feel like I haven't talked to anyone who has said that they weren't like really quick on board with Taylor. I wasn't like I think I did like Taylor from chapter 1. Some of like her word choice and stuff, which really comes down to like at the time that was just the way Wildbow wrote generally, I think. Um,
Yeah, I think it was his word choice rather
yeah,
than hers.
but it made me like her right from the start. Um,
Mhm.
like some of the stuff she said, like moving at a decent clip, I was like, oh, that's the way I would have said that shit. Just like really dumb stuff like that. So
2 plus 4 times 5 says, but that their top 10 worm characters are Taylor, Lisa, spoiler, spoiler, Amy, spoiler, spoiler, Rachel, spoiler, Alec.
I hope that that's not a joke list and that you know what all those spoilers are for real.
So Taylor, sorry, Tattletale, um,
Good.
oh, let me read what Vale said. The only thing that bugged me with Taylor in chapter 1 was when she started with such a lie. An hour so long for a lunch. What the fuck, Taylor? That's funny. I just didn't like that she was being like oh, all these other girls are so hot and I don't understand the choices they make, and came off as like really like not like other girls. But I was concerned about her relationship with women. But obviously like once she met Tattletale, like my concerns were dashed. I just
I
didn't want to
I think that
be.
you and a lot of other people had like an concern that she was like really not like the other girlsing, and I just never got that vibe. Like for whatever reason, it landed better with me. And I mean, I the writer is closer to my age, so I think he was
Mm.
just more easily able to get across what he wanted to someone with maybe a like generational similar perspective or something like that.
Yeah, it's just that I think that I have seen and consumed a lot of media as well as met a lot of people who mostly like as teenage girls were hurt by other teenage girls, and then they have since written off all female relationships. And so I was like, I don't know if I can handle like our main character being like that if it's not like quickly addressed. But it was pretty much immediately addressed because
Mm-hmm.
Tattletale like knew that about her, and so she like purposely like spent girl time with her, and they get a lot of bonding. And Vale says, agree, I didn't have that vibe. I felt a bit. It felt a bit cliche YA start was my big worry early in the story. I really like Taylor from the start. Yeah.
I think I had more confidence in the story to not fall into those pitfalls because, like, the person who was suggesting it to me. Like,
Hmm.
the thing is, when I'm suggesting Worm to someone, I can see how they might come across with a lot of different ideas about what it might be like because I like a
Uh,
lot more, like me and you will watch the little cat high school thing where they're moving around the little what are those pet figures or whatever, I forget what collection they're from, but
yeah.
like we're willing to watch that and be like, wow, this is amazing.
I
um
love those so
but
much.
I don't think most people like so when I'm suggesting something, it's kind of ambiguous what it's going to be like because I
Hmm.
like stuff from a very broad spectrum, which is not to say that Greg has narrow tastes, but I could tell that it wouldn't fall into those kinds of tropes because Greg wouldn't brook such a long story where it did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Vale says I was suggested to read this from a random Goodreads comments. Had never read a serial online or even knew it existed, so my intrinsic trust of author slash structure was low. That's interesting. Yeah.
I think in the We've Got Worm podcast, Matt talks about how when he had first read the story, he and then in his own characterization of it, he had unfairly written off some things and like had some like ideas that like web fiction was inherently not as good as like normal books, but like that was
Mhm.
kind of washed away by this work over time. Um,
Yeah, I do appreciate, and I have read web comics before, so it wasn't too much of a jump. I've read like the format of like serial fiction can be similar to a novel depending on the writer, but definitely in Worm it is web serially.
yeah, it has the defined arcs, and I think they do a good job of breaking things up, but the story does just kind of go and go and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Tattletale starts talking about the statistics. She's like, "Oh, well, 1 in 4, blah 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 blah," and Gru reminds her that there's not four, because Skitter isn't part of the group anymore.
That's
This,
fucking brutal when he says
that
that.
was that was really brutal because I feel like the implication is that he doesn't care if she dies. Like he doesn't say that, but that's really what it felt like to me. It just hurt.
Maybe it's just anything to beat the odds.
Yeah, she's not part of the group. This is a worthy sacrifice. So she looks around for Skitter, who seems to be nearby, I guess because they were like at tables next to each other, and watches her cough the water out of her mask. One of the sorry, not one of the multiple out of town capes give her weird looks as she's like placing bugs on them. And herself, and Skitter is totally oblivious to this. And Tattletale notes that Skitter uses her power so effectively in assessing her environment, and that she would have been better with Tattletale's power than Lisa is at this point.
mm,
Um,
hmm
she also notices like a piece of trash stuck to Skitter, and it like kind of jabs her heart that she doesn't have anyone there to point it out to her. And this is so sad. I think that like I don't know why that like part hit me this time and not the previous times where she's like, "Oh, she doesn't have anyone to help her," when like she literally could if she wanted to. Um, I don't know.
Yeah. Also,
Um,
there's
Go
just
ahead.
something about like this line never struck me until this time. I maybe even should
Yeah.
have pulled it out. The she'd be better at using my power than I am. Somehow I had always glossed over that, but that is like uh I don't think that she thinks that highly of maybe anyone else.
Hmm.
Like
I think that
from her that's
the like
crazy compliment, you know?
yeah, the dichotomy of Lisa though is that she is um like she is really confident and also really insecure,
Mhm.
because like that's kind of how her power came out, where she's like, "Oh my God, like I'm so stupid, and like it's my like carelessness and obliviousness like contributed to this or whatever." So she is like really hurt when people think that they're smarter than her, but I think she kind of feels okay when she's the only one thinking it.
Mhm. Yeah.
um so she she kind of says that like she Lisa could never stand being alone, which is interesting. I feel like we didn't know that about her before. And that Taylor seems to gravitate towards solitude. I think what she means here is that Taylor like pushes people away. Um, because I don't I wouldn't say that she gravitates towards solitude. That's not how I would characterize her.
It feels like maybe from Lisa's perspective, Taylor has self isolated multiple times. Um,
Yeah, which is true.
yeah,
Um,
but I don't know that I agree with Lisa's read here. I
mhm.
think this is maybe
I
just
think
what she thinks.
Yeah, I think that she is just not projecting, but like she sees something about herself and she sees that it's different in Taylor, so she kind of characterizes it a specific way. 2 plus 4 times 5 says one of my friends with good media taste recommended Worm to me back in 2017, and then in early 2021, I heard people in some anime's Discord server recommending it, so I decided to check it out. I bet your friend with good media taste was offended that you took 4 years to check it out.
I'm sure Greg was offended that I took a billion years to start as well.
Yeah, that's true. I ended up reading 75% of it in 3 weeks while also listening to We've Got Worm in between each arc. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, so Tattletale is sad that Taylor lost the group when she'd been like really connecting with everybody, and even like creating like stronger bonds than Tattletale feels that she has with the others, and that she feels guilty. She'd been lax about the whole like Coil and Dinah situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, TT lets the others know that if she dies, the gang will be receiving like letters with all of her account and money information that she set aside, and to split off a portion with Taylor. And she also lets Gru know that if he dies, Aisha will be taken care of. And she kind of wonders if Taylor dies, if she'll want her dad to know how she went out, which I hadn't remembered this line at all. And I was like, I guess that's true. Like, personally, if Taylor died, I would tell her dad what happened.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
Hard to say.
yeah, I mean, I think that not knowing, like, kind of the way that he doesn't know and understand, um,
Anything that's been going on with her the last few weeks.
well, his wife's death, like, I think that was really, like, hard for him,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and and the fact that she died doing something kind of stupid, like, was really hurtful to him too. So I think, like, if he knew, like, Taylor went out, like, doing this incredible thing and, like, saved these people's lives or whatever, like, it wouldn't have so many parallels with Annette's death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um, yeah,
but
like
it's
Bill
like it's
said.
just so like hard to balance that with like how because he's kind of like really straight laced, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Val said, "Why wouldn't you tell him?" You know, because it's like hard information for somebody to learn, and he would also learn that, like, I don't know, he like knew even less about his daughter. He wasn't
Yeah, I
supportive
mean,
enough for
like
her to like confide in him about her power.
the way Danny sees Taylor as a supervillain is essentially like I failed. I let my daughter's life get so like bad that I like that she was like doing crimes. That she got
Yeah,
superpowers from how bad her experience was.
I think that Tattletale would have been able to form it without him knowing that they were like doing crimes. Like, I'm sure he's heard about the Undersiders, but I don't know.
Well, it's just like how do you so she's been on like third page news, she's been on the nightly news, she's been on front page on websites and stuff, and I assume on some physical papers for like when they were fighting the ABB. So she has been around for several weeks and was in several major conflicts in public and has had photos snapped, you
Mm,
know?
yeah, I guess I would probably just be like, after she died, like Arms Master told us that she was actually like he had sent her as a spy or whatever, and then he'd be like, oh, okay.
Right, right.
I
Okay,
think that would
you're
be a
right.
hard to.
She could include that because
Yeah.
it doesn't say it in this chapter, but Tattletale always knew. So
Tattletale always knows. Um, Greg said, not really offended. My experience is that the bite rate on any media recommendation is low unless you sit the person down and shove it down their throat, which is funny because that's what he did to do to you.
yeah, it's
Which is more
literally like,
effort
yeah, he put it on during drive to
of road trip.
Seattle, and so
Yeah.
we listened to it on the entire drive, then throughout a big portion of the trip, then the entire drive back, and I believe we were 10 arcs in. We were on arc 10, like maybe halfway through when we got back.
Mm.
So
Says just from like 10 seconds of thinking, it feels very wrong to me to not share it. Danny deserves to know. Be fair to Danny, he's not wrong. He did let it get that bad. Well, I don't want him to feel bad though. Um, Vale says he deserves to know right this instant, in my opinion. It's Taylor's largest mistake not to talk to him. He adores her. He is just a person with strengths slash weaknesses, but he would, but if he knew, he would be amazing. Yeah,
I just don't know if I necessarily agree. I think we just have different opinions on it. Like I don't think that it's necessarily always better for a person to know. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I don't
I
know.
think if Tattletale could spin it the right way, that it might have a better effect on him.
Once you presented the idea of her sending it forward as uh with the information, like with
Like her being
like
the
the
vigilante or whatever.
the undercover thing, yeah, like with
Yeah.
that context that she could add, maybe that works. But I just think that, hmm, yeah, I don't know. I just think I have different ideas on this, on like what
Yeah.
is like morally right or whatever, or like
Hmm.
morally mandatory, I guess, because there's a lot of like, I don't know. There are a lot of things that I think are like, you kind of must do this, otherwise you're being a bad person. But
Yeah, this
this
one's
is
more
this is
nuanced.
different. Yeah.
2 plus 4 times 5 says if Taylor dies during this arc, if when Taylor dies during this arc, and Lisa tells Danny, I feel like he would want to know what cape his daughter was, and then I think he might do some research about the Undersiders on his own, so it probably wouldn't work
Right.
to hide what Taylor's been doing these past few weeks. Yeah.
Right.
Um.
Yeah, I think the only way is to say the undercover thing, because otherwise, like, he would definitely insist that Lisa tell him who, and then
Mhm.
and if it's someone like, if he knows that she's been a cape recently because like her
Mhm.
behavior changed, he could. I do believe that Danny could put two and two together. He is a smart person, just like Taylor's a smart person.
Mhm.
So yeah,
So, um, Tattletale. Oh, so she's like thinking about this, and then Legends was like, I don't remember what he says. I just wrote that he battle cries
he
as
plays the
Leviathan
song Battle
prepares
Cry.
himself to charge. Yeah. So Leviathan whips his tail around and slams it into some capes, and then like another line is taken down by the water that follows the movement of his tail. Tattletale hangs back and starts analyzing him. Steady blood flow from small wounds, asynchronous movement. His has blood, but no comprehensive cardiac system. No cardiac system. No mouth. Nose. No apparent ears. Non-standard nervous system. Tattletale remarks to Regent that his power probably doesn't work great on Leviathan, and he's like, "Yeah, duh." And he would probably like, which I kind of think this is true. Like, if he like tried to do it, then his power would be like, "That's wrong," and try to kill him. You know what I mean? Um,
Regent.
yeah, like it would just
Hmm.
backfire on
I
he
I
would get
just
like the
don't.
bad backfire.
I just don't think anything would happen. I don't think he would have a backfire because I don't think that his power could interact with Leviathan because
Mhm.
Leviathan is so removed from having a human body. It's like he can't use his power on a dog.
I think
And a
that
dog's
he
literally
would.
alive.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess I just had assumed that if his power was like totally removed from him, he would know because he wouldn't be able to sense his body, and like that would be very obvious, right?
Yeah. Let me see if I can find the exact quote here. From
Hmm.
Regent. Uh, if I can do
He just seems
something, my power is probably gonna back. I think that he's too far away. Does he ever say that he can sense him?
He doesn't say that he can sense him, and maybe it is that he's too far away. Because in my mind, like he would be like, I can definitely not dial into him. Because there's like a point later where we see him like he can sense something that is like somewhat human, somewhat non-human, and he's like, that was weird. Like he can tell that something is weird about it.
Hmm. Yeah. Um.
Um, I wonder if he can feel if people are pregnant.
Probably. I've got to assume.
That's so
Um.
funny. He's got so many like weird side effects.
Yeah.
Um, 2 + 4
Hmm.
× 5 says if Leviathan was close enough to Regent to sense, I'd imagine they wouldn't have time for idle chatter. Yeah, I think maybe he's too far away. His range must be shorter than that.
I we can try and figure it out later, but I don't know that at any point he says that he can sense any of the Endbringers. Um.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of yeah.
Yeah. So, Tattletale glances to Skitter to make sure she doesn't hear, and she asks Regent if his secret weapon would work, which we as the readers don't know what his secret weapon is, but I do, and that is a crazy thing to ask Tattletale. Uh,
Especially because of how
we're-
long it takes to work. Like it
I
already
just am
takes
like,
like 45 minutes to do like a good like if you get a quick time on it and not like a long time, it's like 45 minutes. And it imagine
uh,
trying to survive around Leviathan for 45 fucking minutes. Like
that
with
it's
a
so
normal
funny
human
because
body.
I that is one thing about like Wildbow might re should maybe rethink that line if he does redo it because or not redo it, but if he does like publish these as novels or whatever, because that's just a little goofy. You can drop that Tattletale and Regent seem to have a secret together in some other way.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
but Regent says even if it did work, it would take way longer than usual. So Tattletale tells him to focus on helping out with first aid. 2 + 4 × 5 says, imagine if Tattletale used the armband to say, new strategy, let's pin down Leviathan for 6+ hours. Yeah.
Right, and even like the structure of the fight, like I don't think that Brockton Bay would exist if the like even if like kind of in his standard range of 2 hours. Like let's say it's a bad run, but it's like still within his normal range and not like a multiple. It's like 2 hours. Brockton Bay will not exist in that time.
So he watches Leviathan and Alexandria tussle for a bit,
Just a
and he
little
manages
tussle.
to he manages to pin her down with a claw, and then he's like seemingly trying to drown her. He's like just blasting water straight into her face. And Dragon in her mech suit launches in, and he like rips the fuck into her while she attacks him with like some liquid fire stuff. Um, Tattletale requests a flyer using the bracelet thingy, the armband. Um, and a man with a jetpack came and he picks her up and places her on top of a building. And there's already like a dozen other capes up there. I guess probably like ranged attackers and maybe other thinkers. The fact that they like don't have I think there's like a later Endbringer fight where they're like, Tattletale, come with all these other thinkers and do a bunch of thinking. Like the fact that they just like put all the thinkers on the battlefield here is so goofy. And I'm glad that they figure out not to do that in the future.
I think the idea is that they were all going to split up, but Strider had to teleport all of them out of the building at the exact same time.
Yeah, I
So
think that's what happened.
I think a lot of times, because the next Endbringer fight that we do see, like, well, I guess maybe depending on how you call it, one of the Endbringer fights that we see is like definitely they have this big grand strategy going in, but like
Hmm.
five of the key pieces get knocked over right before the battle starts, and it's like fuck.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So as the pair, Dragon and Leviathan continue to fight, Tattletale's power determines that the suit is being remotely operated. So we do not need to worry about the fact that Dragon is like just being torn to shreds right now.
yeah,
Do you want to read this excerpt?
yeah. Leviathan, non-standard cardiac, nervous systems, irregular biology, no standard organs or weak points, no brain, heart, or center of operations for the rest of his body. Irregular biology, no vulnerable organs, body divided into layers, extending down to hyper-durable core body. Each layer is slightly more than twice as durable as previous. Exterior skin is as hard as aluminum alloy, but flexible, lets him move. 3% deeper in toward the core of arms, legs, claws, or tail, or 5.5% in toward core of head, trunk, neck, tissues are hard as steel. 6% in the core of extremities, or 1% toward core of main body slash head. Tissue strong as tungsten. 9% toward core of extremities. 1.5% toward core of main body head. Tissues as strong as boron. 12%, and then it cuts. And I gotta say here, she well, I guess I'll read the next part. She had to start again. Her power did that. If she didn't focus, it kept giving her a steady flow of information, but not information she could use. While she doesn't need more data points for this, I actually do think that this is very valuable information to her because we see
Yeah.
that the core is much, much tougher and that they're able to damage the limbs much more easily because um, if you need to go 9% of the way into a limb to reach the density of 1.5% of like the core body, then the difference is like massive.
Yeah. She This is like an insane amount of information. I guess that she gets like she can just kind of gather a lot of information about biology and stuff, which is interesting. Um, and I'm assuming it's easier for her to get because Leviathan is not human and never was, which is the next thing that she gets. And she's like, that's interesting. And then she imagines she has like Gru whispering in her ear, something we can use. Even though, like, to me or to Taylor, that would be helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Gru just has a much different like focus on what is useful in a situation than like Taylor and Tattletale do. Um, so she attempts to focus on the weak points. Um, so there's simple organs at the core of the torso, and the thinnest part of the body is at the joints, and that's like the most important aspect of that. So Tattletale begins to communicate this to the armband so it can let everyone know, but it cuts her off when it blares out a warning. Um, so all everybody's force fields go up as a tidal wave stories high crashes into the building that she and the other dozen capes are standing on. And the wave's not tall enough to like actually hit them, but it rumbles the whole building and everybody falls over, which is so scary to me. I've never like I guess like that happens in earthquakes and stuff, but that doesn't like happen in Boise. I've never
Y-
been knocked down from like a
Yeah.
structure I'm on rumbling too hard.
The biggest the biggest earthquake I can remember happening here um it was a
Was a
couple
couple years
years
ago,
ago. It was
2020.
like 20, yeah, it was in 2020, and um it was light enough that when I yelled at my mom to get in the doorway, she hadn't realized that an earthquake was happening, even though shit was
Yeah.
shaking around.
Yeah, I was like working and I was like, that was crazy.
Yeah, I think I was like home early in the day or something, and then I was standing in the kitchen or something. I don't know.
2 plus 4 times 5 says, can't believe Leviathan is literally brainless. No thoughts, head empty, except where it's filled with arbitrary large volumes of water. Arbitrarily. Yeah, that's funny. He does have like, I don't know if you went over this, like his appearance last stream because I was not here, but he has like cracks in his face where like you can see his eyes, which is so funny.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'd never realized that. I just thought he had like a couple, well, not a couple, a few just like more normal eyes on his face.
Yeah, they're like little crags, I think, that go, and then the
Yeah,
eyeball sets in them rather than like a proper eye socket or anything.
yeah. Vale says, I assume you have seen the post on the math from this section, and what is it? WOG?
Uh,
WOG reply that it's correct.
Word of God.
Word of God.
That means Wildbow in
Um,
this case.
okay. Um, so everybody falls over, and then Leviathan,
Oh, wait, real quick. I
because
did want to go back and pull out 2 plus 4 times 5 at the exact same moment was saying, well, to be fair, Strider teleported them all into the street, and then as the message was being typed, I said it. So,
yeah,
and that's why I responded with,
yeah.
Gah, ninja!
So there's like no more obstacles in Leviathan's way because he wiped out literally everybody on the ground. So he like scales the building that they're on. And when I don't think he lands on the roof, he's like holding on to the edge with one claw, right? It doesn't really say,
Yeah, I don't
but
even think he gets onto the roof. Like, it's not worth
yeah,
his time.
he's just kind of like King Konging it. That's the guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and his water echo like so he like runs up and so his like water echo like flies in the air and flashes on everyone. And Tattletale manages to hold on to the building edge as she's just waterboarded. I guess she's like clinging to kind of like hunkered down on the edge of it rather than like over the edge of the building at this point. Um, Not everyone was as lucky. Leviathan strikes down a couple capes who definitely die. And then a cape uses his power to pelt Leviathan in the face with like some rocks, and
That
in
power sounds
turn is
dope, by the way. Just like
yeah,
you spray like
he just
highly
sprays
pressurized rock
rocks
spray.
out of his hands.
Yeah.
And he is in turn cut in half by Leviathan's tail, which I guess until this point I didn't realize that his tail could just cut people in half. Um,
Yeah, because it's
and
like whipping around and it sends out the water echo. Like whether you get hit by the tail or the water, it can like either one can snap you in half if it's close enough
yeah.
to where the water came out. Because it's like you gotta imagine his tail is like minimum several. Like you hold your hands up and you can't hold them together. You gotta widen them out, and then like that thick of water together hitting you all at once. And like
Mhm.
the thing that legend says about it, like the water does have more surface tension because of the speed at which it's moving, and because it's
Mhm.
not like a thin burst, it doesn't like mm, dissipate in the air
Mhm.
fast enough. So it's a
Hmm.
whole thing.
It's a whole thing. The first time I read this fight, I did not like I knew the water echo was there, but I guess I didn't realize that it was like it kind of like carries more momentum than he does.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, because he
so
can
that's
he can
interesting.
stop, and then like the echo, it's like it's constantly falling off of him or like going where he just was, but it will
Mhm.
also continue onward if he does something like that. And if he tail lashes, then like when it comes out, it has the momentum of the body part, I think. So like that's why
Mhm.
he can swat his arm in a swath and have it launch a dense little wall of water.
Yeah. So Leviathan directs his water echo towards Tattletale very dismissively, which is funny, and she falls from the roof.
I'm semi-convinced
Stupid.
there are capes that they intentionally don't kill in situations like this.
Yeah,
Because we know they're going easy on the capes from later. Which, I mean, I guess kind of spoilies, but whatever.
they and the triumvirate kind of mentions, like, I think Alexandria is like, yeah, me and Leviathan kind of have like a song and dance that we do
Right,
when we
right.
fight.
Yeah.
It's like a, yeah, I don't know, it's very strange. Um, Stupid. The thought was an accusation, biting, directed wholly at herself. And that's kind of how we leave off. So I hope Lisa didn't die because we just learned more things about her.
Yeah. Yep, yep, yep.
And Pine Tattletale didn't just get killed. Yeah, I
I
know.
okay, so I know that some people read this chapter, and I guess maybe we shouldn't have. In some ways, it's kind of a big spoiler, but we've talked about the idea that Tattletale's in the whole book before. That
Mhm.
she's here for a vast majority of screen time, um,
Yeah.
and that it's I don't know. When I read this, I definitely didn't think that she was dead, and I didn't think she was dead in the other Arc 8 part either. There was just
Mm.
something about it that didn't feel like I know that he'll casually kill people off in some ways, but I think that
I
if she
don't
were to
think
die,
that
she'd die on screen.
I don't think that this would be the chapter for her to, like, I think you can kind of some of the interludes you could read and then be like, oh, and now they're gonna die. But like this interlude didn't feel like we're done with this character now, and like we've had like some sense of closure or something.
Yeah, there are interludes where you could play the interlude and the amount that it gives you is like, okay, this guy could like die next chapter and we kind of feel like we would have gotten the full picture of them because you like really get to know that person. Um
Mm,
like I mean fucking Justin might as well die the next chapter after his chapter.
yeah.
Like as much
um,
use as he gets in the rest of the story.
Vale asked if we saw the post on the math, which I didn't. I don't think that this math is something that I specifically would be able to parse or would want to spend the time trying to understand, but maybe you feel differently. It's just like the onion of them is very strange.
Well, I think the math maybe like the reason it's worth pulling out is to realize why uh for instance, like if you drop a nuclear bomb on one of these motherfuckers, even if it blows up directly on them, it
Hmm.
doesn't really matter. Like it literally
'Cause they
wouldn't
have
do enough to kill them.
yeah, because they're literally like so dense. I guess it is to just part of it is like people can't just be like, oh, why don't you just nuke them and whatever.
Right. Well, I literally thought that when I first heard about them because it's like there are
Mhm.
so many threats in these superhero movies where it's like, you know what would kill off Thanos? A fucking nuclear bomb.
Or just like a normal bomb, probably.
Yeah, but like that's the thing is that these particular creatures, the Endbringers, are um to quote the documentary about Star Wars 1, it's so dense. Um every frame.
um, the 2 + 4 × 5 says spoiler, the contingency plans she wrote in her will are insane. Vale says the inner core density is greater than the entire solar system per square inch, and space and time are warped to the point that nothing related to science or physics holds true. Yeah, that's a lot. He's a big boy, okay?
Mhm.
He's
Mhm.
dense, beefy.
Also,
Um,
I don't know if they ever say this explicitly, but I got the impression that his body and possibly all the Endbringers' bodies are like more or less the equivalent of a portal that's allowing
mhm,
them to kind of bring in material so fast for the healing or like to have the water echo and like they are just so much more attuned to the way that the powers kind of work because most of the powers stem from that like crossing universe kind of thing. Like it takes
Mhm.
a long time to really wrap your head around it, but they derive from like that place of like pulling things in from other realities.
Yeah, they're just like way more in tune than with that than most of the real capes because they're not even capes because they're not people. I
Yeah.
don't know what they are. It makes me annoyed.
It's so
um
funny because like there are more answers in Ward, but you just haven't read them yet.
I know, that's what I'm like, well, they're not in the book yet, but like we have to figure out what's going on there. So it makes me nervous. Um, let's see. A portal so that they don't immediately become a black hole. Yeah. Uh, Greg said, "What a delightfully dense boy." Vale said, "They could fight him for a year without him fighting back and not make a millimeter of progress once they get to a certain depth in his core." Yeah, like not even very far, honestly. Um, do we want to talk about Lisa?
Yeah. So Lisa, I wrote that she's adrift because she doesn't have a focus, and this is in the like flashback scenes. Adrift because she didn't have a focus like Taylor at the time, and uh, that she she's kind of adrift again, but she's still like low key like my actual mission is to just get Taylor back on the team or to start a new team with Taylor. Like I think that
Yeah.
that's the point she's at right now.
We do learn, so we learned quite a few things about Lisa, but I really just wish we had learned more. We learned a lot more details about how Lisa's power works, about how like she has to she has to like stop and refocus it a lot. I feel like we learned a lot about how much, like how deeply she cares about Taylor, which I feel like I knew that she cared about her, but maybe not to the extent that like I don't think I had a good grasp about like how intense it was.
So
Um
feel like it's maybe even undersold in this chapter.
yeah, because she's like distracted by other things and the fact that half of the chapter is like pre-Taylor.
Right, like
Um
we never see how she like how an interaction with Taylor goes from Lisa's perspective because I feel like she's probably like despite all the seemingly bold moves she does, I feel like she's probably like walking on eggshells and kind of like semi freaking out, you know?
yeah. Something that you mentioned that I think is notable is that Lisa did not use her power to like analyze Taylor during this chapter, which I think is really interesting because she does that to everyone. And I'm sure that she does it sometimes, but like she was like more just standing there like pondering things. The like kind of information that she was getting from watching her was not the kind of information that she would have gotten from her power, even if they like didn't if they weren't telling us that she was using it and she was. She's just like, "Oh, Taylor's so lonely."
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, I think that another notable thing that we learn from this is that like Lisa is, I think, a lot more like sad and not having as much fun as she kind of has implied. Like I think when like even when
Are you saying that
she
her
like
smile is a mask?
it's not the smile, it's like her being like, "We do this for fun and profit." It's just totally not true for her. Like that's totally she even at the beginning when she's stealing powers or when she's straight up stealing money from people, she ha she seems to have some end goal or like ulterior motives. The fact that she doesn't use the money because she is like physically not taking care of herself. They talk about like she's has greasy hair and she's wearing like old clothes and stuff.
I kind of
And
I got the impression that she was like basically pulling a job once every 2 to 3 weeks, and while she would get a couple $1,000s, she's so like
mhm,
bad with money and stuff that she would kind of, because we see from later
Blow it
she's
all.
still bad with money later.
She is bad with money, but I had gotten the impression that she had money saved because she
Was trying to bribe the guy.
and maybe it was a yeah, she tries to bribe the guy, which I don't know, maybe it was just a total lie, but like she doesn't say to herself like, "Oh, I'll give this a shot," and then it doesn't work out. Like it seems
You're right. You're
genuine.
right.
And we see her bribe people later and it is genuine.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, she's just like not she's just it's like what you said, like she is very adrift. And I think that like she kind of tries to come off more like Regent, like she is really enjoying herself, but like it's clear that I don't think she's enjoying any aspect of anything.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really having a good time.
But why would you smile if you're not happy?
I don't know. I've never heard of a character doing that. I don't think
I
they ever will.
literally that was I think everyone here has read Ward or part of it, but I just had read that chapter where Victoria says that like verbatim to somebody, and I was like, what the fuck? She's like genuinely confused.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
yeah.
It's pretty silly. I want to talk about that more, but I will spoil things about Ward
Don't
if
talk
we
about
talk
it
about
more.
it. So it's a problem. Um, anyway, do we got more to say about Lisa? I kind of feel like we through this conversation have gleaned more than we even did when the script was written or when we talked earlier. Um,
Yeah, I think so. I wish that we had gotten more because it's like when we get interludes later, we're gonna have so much more to say about and we have in the past. Like think about like the Gregor
yeah,
chapter.
about like the
I know we
way
hadn't
he sees
spent
the world. I feel like Tattletale's narrative voice is weirdly not as defined as I'd want it to be.
yeah, it's not as defined as I'd want it to be. And I think that you're right. I don't think we learn a lot about her worldview. It could be the case that her worldview is just to patch things up with Taylor, like make Taylor happy at this point. But it has to be bigger than that.
Right, and we
That's not like her
also
whole thing
we
ever.
we don't Lisa's got a lot going on that we haven't learned about so far in the story, and we don't hear about any of that even in the background way in this. And
Yeah, she doesn't like hint at anything, and there's nothing that you like read and then
there's
like
nothing
besides the
where it would change the meaning once you know stuff
hmm
later. I feel like this chapter, like I don't. If I was to have close read it now versus like the first time that I read it and tried to gain insight, the only stuff I like know more about is like kind of other stuff, like other people, like
yeah.
the Leviathan information. But like, there's nothing about Tattletale that is like, oh wow, this is a big like turnaround. Like, because there is shit like that in other people's things where once you know the full story, you're like, oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, and then when you reread it, you get more value and you can like see the like little hints that you had missed along the way or like you had misinterpreted or whatever. But yeah, you really don't get that with this chapter. And not that I feel bad because Vale and 2 plus 4 times 5 were like, this is one of the best ones. And it is good. It still is good.
Look, we love this book.
When I want an it's just when I get an interlude, I really want it to be like I want to get as much as possible from the specific character.
Because it's kind of like
It's
for
your
the
only
majority,
opportunity.
yeah, it's the only time that we get this chance. Like most characters get exactly one interlude when they
Yeah.
get one. There's a few
Yeah.
exceptions, like there's a back to back in this book because when writing the chapter, he was like, "Oh, this is going to be so long. This is going to be so long." So
This
then
is a
he split it.
spoiler, but Arms Master has like 3.5, and it makes me so angry. Because that's like the most that anybody else gets,
Yeah.
besides like the interlude arcs kind of stuff.
Right, right. Yeah.
Um,
I think it's like
ugh.
Kraus, then
Mm,
Colin,
mm,
then that's it. I think Kraus, Colin, and then Golem are the three who get like cheaterfied into having multiple.
yeah. And it does make sense for it makes sense for a couple of those, but then they just keep doing it again and again with Colin. He only changes his name once. You only get one extra interlude.
Yeah.
That's my rule.
Can you think of anybody else? Are we missing anybody on the multiples for Worm? Because I don't think so. Um,
I don't think so.
maybe
I
somebody who
think
gets a
Lisa
small
gets like
portion of one of the other like
yeah,
multi
we get
perspectives.
like little snippets, but yeah, Pago, like we get a little
Oh,
bit
you're right. You're right.
Pago.
There's basically two Pigot chapters.
Yeah. It's just one of them isn't, but it also is.
Right. Yeah. Oh
Well, I think
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's all I have to say about Lisa right now is she's just a sad boy, and I hope she feels better and can make things up with Taylor before they both die.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Before they both die in this fight.
Yeah,
Um.
I mean Lisa's dying currently, so she better be
Oh, two
fast.
plus four times five said Pigot. If you wrote that before I said it, then sorry for stealing your answer.
Yeah, they said it at the same time. Emma has multiple interludes. Does she?
I'm like that's the one where my brain is like kind of I'm racking my brain because I know where one of them is. Uh, but what is the second one?
Yeah, I don't remember a second one.
Huh. Well,
Well, what did we learn about Taylor? Oh my God, the fact that we this is our first time, which you mentioned, seeing Taylor from someone else's perspective. And I think the main thing is that Taylor does not, she has a incredibly hard time understanding how she comes off. And this was
hmm,
probably like part of what led to like the bullying and stuff, is that she has like very strange like a strange physical demeanor, and she's self-conscious about the wrong things.
yeah.
Like she has trash stuck on her, she doesn't notice it. She doesn't notice people giving her looks, which I do believe tattletale that that's the case, that she totally like is oblivious, because she does this always, like anytime she enters a room she's like planting bugs on people, and the
Here's a
last
nice
time she
bug on your
mentioned
face.
people, yeah, she plants bugs on your face so that she can tell when you're talking and shit. And the only time that she mentions people being upset by it is like when she's attacking them.
Right, yeah.
Or like threatening them with them.
But I
So
don't think they're super cool with it regardless.
yeah, people are like not happy and with like her whole thing. So it makes sense why people might not treat her as, it's not just the fact that she's a villain is the thing.
Right, and I mean like this it's like a toxic negative perception as far as the like metaphor of powers to personalities. It's as though
Mhm.
she walks into a room and just gives off super bad vibes.
Yeah, she makes people uncomfortable, and that is really funny because
Yeah.
like we've been with her this whole time, and she's like, "Oh, I'm just a helpless little person, and I don't know why everyone." It's not. I'm not saying like she deserves this treatment, but it's just one of those things that like now it makes sense to us.
Yeah. Greg says Theo has two interludes, and then two plus four times five said, or three if you include the early one. And yeah, I had only been thinking of the back to back ones, but between the two of you, you're definitely correct that Greg might have been referring to the back to back ones as one. But yeah, Theo, Theo's got three theoretically, I guess. So yeah,
Yeah.
didn't even think of the first one. He
Um,
is so different though. Like that is the
mhm.
whole like thing that Wildbow says is that like I only want to do the extra interlude
And there's
if
been
they've
like a monumental change.
yeah, and there has been and so his personality between those two chapters is like so noticeably different. Yeah.
Mm.
But Taylor, let me think. Taylor. It's it's also like I don't know, to see her alone like this, it uh we already knew she was feeling alone, but it puts it in perspective that even from other people's perspective, like she's right. Nobody's coming near her and like people don't want to be around her and stuff
Mm.
in this group of people fighting. So,
There's not a lot of, because I think the only like actual solo person that we at least saw in the last chapter was Parian, and she has already been taken under shit, what's her name? The other girl.
Shadowstalker.
Yeah. And not, yeah, she was hanging out with Shadowstalker
Oh, and Bambina.
and the other girl. The other one.
Bambina.
No, the other one. Foil, but not foil.
Oh, Flechette.
Flechette, yes.
Sorry.
Um, yeah, she like immediately Bambina came and talked to her, and then another girl came, and I don't think they say it explicitly, but we know that they didn't know each other previously. She just like decides to connect with her or whatever.
Right.
So it is really just as far as we understand at this point, it is just Taylor and then a bunch of other like people who are in teams and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very few people come to these things solo. Even people who are like out of town villains, like Barker and
Hmm.
Biter came together, as far as I know. So, um, and I just picked them because they're like random people who I know are in this fight who are from out of town.
Yeah.
So, um, let's see here. I think we've kind of said a lot about Taylor. If we think of anything more, we can just say it after.
Yeah, part of it is just that a lot of the things that are said about Taylor are like clearly just Lisa's perspective
Mm-hmm.
and not exactly true. Like I don't think it's true that Taylor seeks out solitude or whatever she says.
Right. Right. Oh, you know what? I
Um,
missed this comment from a while back, but I had read it and I never read it aloud. But 2 + 4 × 5 had made the joke. Endbringers, taking the human out of parahuman since 1992.
Stupid.
And then says in the recent chat, Theo isn't one of my top 10 favorite worm characters, but he is top 15. And then Greg had correctly assumed you meant Flechette.
Yeah. I think that Theo is probably in my top 10. But we won't get derailed.
Yeah, I ranking like picking my tops is gonna be real difficult when we make tier lists because
Yeah,
I like a lot of them. So
I think we'll have to do like side characters as like a separate thing, like people who are barely talked about, but we
one of my
also like.
favorite questions to people is like, and we'll ask this at some point as like a bonus question or something, and once we know more
Mhm.
people, but who is your favorite um worm character who you don't think would be like in the top, let's say 15 or 20 most popular characters? Because
Mhm.
like that discounts like Taylor, Lisa, um, Rachel. All of the big names are kind of out of the running because it's like, yeah, but everybody likes Rachel basically.
Yeah.
Um, and then you say like, for me, it's like Fierce A. I think Fierce A fucking rules. We see him once,
Mhm.
but I love him. So, um, anyway, though, I think we can move on to Brian. The only things I've pulled
Mhm.
out in this section pretty much are the different Lisa related power things. So I am gonna read the ones that are character specific. We left out all the ones having to do with the mercenaries and the shop girls because there's way more of those. But um,
Mhm.
for Brian, it was darkness generation, muffle sound, light inhibits radiation, Microwaves, radio frequencies, minuscule effects on the transfer of kinetic energy. Then cut off. Orders, demands, statements, condemnations, use of skull and costume, solo operator, organized, careful to divorce emotion from action and agenda, falls back on order, rules, self-discipline in times of stress. Folded arms, irritation, doubt.
We learned that Brian was a huge prick when he met the other Undersiders in this chapter. And that I don't know. Yeah, I think it's like a combination of like he was just more jaded at the time and he like didn't trust these people or whatever, and then he had the opportunity to bond with them later on.
Right. And I think that I'm going to include like Brian's demeanor in the past in my answer to the audience participation question because I really do think
Mhm.
it like his demeanor is one of the biggest factors for like why I think that she would not have integrated well into the original Undersiders.
Yeah, because when she meets Brian for the first time, he is not nearly this harsh.
He's warm
Um,
to her the first time they meet on the battlefield.
yeah, like he's like, "Oh, that was pretty cool," or whatever the fuck. I don't remember.
Right, right.
But but she like immediately is like, "Oh, this guy's pretty cool for a supervillain kind of thing." Um, but yeah, I'm glad that Brian's been able to make some growth, even though I think he reverted a little bit when he, in my opinion, was like, I don't care if Taylor died.
I think that he like that is coming from a place of like hurt, you know? I don't think
Yeah,
him saying that I think if you asked him tomorrow, like if Taylor like let's say they all
if
make it out of the
Taylor
fight and
actually,
they don't, you know, contact each other or whatever. I still think he would be like, yeah, it would have been terrible if she died.
yeah, I guess if she does, if she does die, he'll be like, "Aw," and he doesn't
I think he'd
argue
be all
when
fucked up about it.
Lisa. Yeah, he doesn't argue when Lisa says, "Make sure that that Taylor gets like a cut of the money or whatever."
Right.
He doesn't seem to care. Um, oh, Brian. I think that's most of like we kind of knew all of the stuff about him. Like his he's definitely like leaning into the toxic masculinity side that he was kind of raised into. As we kind of learned, I guess we've learned bits and pieces of it. He kind of mentions how like his he like grew up basically only bonding with people in like a violent
Well,
in a
right.
violent way.
We hear and this is like I guess more spoilery than usual, but we hear in his own like words later when he's talking to Taylor, like I'm the type of person who would jump on people's weaknesses in the past. Like
Mhm.
I used to I'm worried about people like doing that because I used to do that. And so
Mhm.
I think that being with the Undersiders and having a more stable Cape outlet and income makes him able to let down his guard and grow up a bit because like that kind of like attitude and action is very like childish to me, you know? Um
Yeah, it's just that it's not even really him is the thing. It's like interesting that he has like these aspects of himself that don't even really align with him as a person, but they were like so like socialized into him.
yeah, yeah, I think it's like a socialized coping mechanism where he is acting the way that the other people act so that it's like a like emotional guarding from the fact that he's around all these like probably super toxic dudes in like the boxing gyms and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say about Brian.
Yeah. Um Tattletale doesn't spend much time focusing on Alec and feels like she has the read of him quite quickly. Disinterested or affected disinterest, lack of engagement, lack of pupil dilation or contraction coinciding with eye contact, limited emotional depth, deeply repressed emotions and or depression, sociopath. She's just like,
Yeah,
got him.
sociopath. And I think it's the same thing. Like I feel like there's more to learn about Alec, even though these things are true. But I don't think that Lisa will ever delve more until there's some kind of like disruption of this assessment that she has of him.
Yeah.
So it's a little sad. I think that it makes her relationships just a lot more shallow than they could be, which she even mentions that like Taylor is has gotten closer to the other Undersiders. It's like in the like technical word, like Lisa is closer to them because they trust her more and stuff like that. But I don't think that she feels emotional closeness. Like she would never mm, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like
She
she
wouldn't have
just
done that thing where Taylor went and helped Rachel to try and get closer to Rachel.
yeah. She is fond of them and she cares about them and their lives and everything. But I think that it's kind of like how similar to like how parahumans feel about non-parahumans. Like I think that she
She's
not
another level
condescend
disconnected where
yeah,
she doesn't
she's just so
feel, yeah,
yeah, she's
associated.
so different from them. Um and doesn't really make up that difference.
Right, right. Um, let's see here. I wanted to say that I guess I think we learn a little bit about Alec that like it almost doesn't matter how dire a situation is. I feel like his demeanor when they're about to fight Leviathan, and it's almost cool. I guess this is another thing about Brian. Like they are both like solidified enough in their like cape identity that they like that none of the three of them break their mask. Like they're
Uh-huh.
yeah. When they are discussing Leviathan, when he's right there and they're looking at him, like the
Yeah.
most we get is Alex saying he looks bigger, or what does he say? In
I think he says that, yeah, he looks
Yeah,
bigger in person.
he says bigger in person. Like that's the most you get out of him, and uh, it they're more solid in their cape identities, I think, than Taylor is. Where like
Yeah.
she, I think, is more scared than them, even though they equally have like an accurate view of how dangerous this is.
Hmm.
So,
I
um,
think they're also
mhm.
like less not that they're less worried about dying, but like I don't know. I feel like Taylor like tries very very much harder to stay alive
Right, which
than
is ironic
than
because
any of them do.
people talk about her like she's always trying to throw her life away or whatever, but like I don't feel like that's true.
Yeah.
I feel like she's doing what she thinks is like a necessary thing at the time, almost always.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it just um it's hard to see for some people who even if they have read her perspective still can't relate to it,
Hmm.
that like I think it's very disconnected from a normal person's experience. And I think that
Hmm.
Taylor, despite in some ways seeming like normal-ish and rational-ish, she's just like kind of really unhinged.
Yeah.
So yeah. 2 + 4 × 5 had said, "Imagine what Lisa's power told her about Taylor on the first meeting." And the joke I made in my head when I first read that was that it said, "Look, it's your sister.
Yeah.
She's right over there."
She's
Um,
right over there. That could be yours for the low price of.
Rachel. I think we can move on to Rachel, and it
Hmm.
I'll just read this thing as well. Word choice 2. Haunted by demons. Swearing. Antisocial. Unhappy with status quo. Seeking to change things. Seeking money. Power. Prestige. Antisocial. Swearing. Clothes prioritizing function and comfort over style. Not seeking human connections. Prefers company of dogs. Powers relate to dogs. Powers relating to dogs. Not seeking human connections. Antisocial, inner demons, power side effects, disconnected, standard human empathy and understanding, no longer grasps full extent of human relations, signals, signs, cues. And she stops herself there, but like this is our best example, in my opinion, of her power just spinning its wheels, just like saying the same things over and over, basically. Like, it keeps word clouding antisocial back into it, and I think it's a good, like, we can sort of infer from this the way that she always judges people. Like she sees almost everyone with an incredibly negative slant, and I think it's
Hmm.
because of the fact that her power is relaying to her the bad sides of them and focusing and spiraling on it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because, I mean, like, theoretically, there are other things it could be focusing on, but because it's like, how do I get you battle ready to fight this person? Whoever the person
Yeah.
is, even if it's someone she wouldn't want to fight.
Hmm. Like
Um,
it could be focusing on like for Rachel specifically, like all of the positive things about like her relationship with dogs or whatever, but that's not what it's focused on at all.
right, yeah.
Um,
I don't feel like
I
we
don't know if
learn
we
that
learn
much
anything about,
about her.
yeah.
I think it's really interesting to see this, like the way that Tattletale sees her, and
Mhm.
to see their first little like couple sentence back and forth. But like she's not at the fight, so we don't get anything from that half of the chapter. Um,
Mhm.
and that's where we get a lot of the information about Alec, in my opinion, is seeing him there and his continued composure under like real stress.
Yeah, like the most dire of situations.
Because he's like, I mean, he's a bit spacey, but he's been the Cape for the longest, for like 4 years or whatever.
Yeah. It's also interesting that he agreed to, I don't know if I brought this up at all, but the fact that he was like, yeah, if an Endbringer comes, I want to fight it. It doesn't seem very him, but I guess it was maybe like everybody else said yeah, so he was like, sure, I don't give a shit.
I think it's that, but it's also like I think that Alec is the most fun and profit of any of them. He actually has fun doing this stuff. He likes going around fighting, I think, because
That's
it's like
true. He probably
something
gets
that
the
breaks
most like,
through his like emotional like let's just say there's like a bubble. Something has to like strike deep past that bubble for it to feel like anything to him.
yeah,
And
that's true.
this
It
probably
at
feels
least it
fucking
feels like,
crazy.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Uh,
Uh But then, yeah, let's
we'll
move on to
skip.
the shop girls. I just put them on here not because I care to speak about their individual personalities per se, but I like that we're seeing again these minor one off characters who get a single scene and they're like pretty well put together and characterized despite having like a minuscule word count.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yep, yep, yep. And then Coil and his group. I only pulled out the little Coil quote, which we did directly read earlier, but I'll just repeat. Word choice, buy verse hire, large amounts of money involved. Word choice, buy verse, make an offer, not really a negotiation. Um, yeah, Coil, his people. We see that Coil's first interaction with Lisa was like pretty brutal. I don't know how he got the other three, but I guess I got the impression that it was like not as much of like a
Yeah, I
violent
feel like
confrontation.
he probably just like asked them.
Yeah, and the thing is that like you could kind of get the other three on board with just the offers of like money and like being able to pull off bigger jobs with like a team and stuff. But
Hmm.
Lisa, they had to not only catch and track down, but also threaten into being a like um, secret keeper of the idea that he is who he is, because she knows who their boss really is the whole time. She
Oh
knows who
yeah.
Coil is. Um, she's the direct contact who talks to him on the phone. She needs
Hmm.
to keep him looking good to the group, laying down information that he says, and then like probably filling in information from her as well to like smooth things over. So she's like doing all these roles. She's a liaison. He's like making sure that she is like under his thumb, I think.
Hmm.
So, yeah. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And then I had the thought for the very first time on this read through, um, are any of the people who kidnap Lisa people who later directly work for Lisa under Coyle's organization? Because that would be funny.
It would be funny. She's got that British lady.
Yeah, it will. I think it'd be especially funny if it was like one of the people she gets along with really well, like if the guy who had the gun, the like the fake boyfriend character, if he was
Uh-huh.
minor or fish or something, like
Yeah.
um but let's see here. You got I think we can move on to Leviathan. I don't really have much more to say about Coil unless you got something.
No, that's it.
Okay. So I will read out these various things. Again, we kind of jokingly put Leviathan stuff in the character section instead of the powers knowledge and world building. Steady blood flow from small wounds, asynchronous movement, but asynchronous movement has blood but no comprehensive cardiac system. No cardiac system, no mouth, no nose, no apparent ears, non-standard nervous system. Um, and then, oh, I guess I accidentally pulled this without reading it, but I had also pulled out the Lisa Power thing that says Dragon enters the battlefield with suit packed with explosives. Risky. Current suit has insufficient room for arms and legs. Suit unmanned. Um, I was going crazy. I was like Tattletale's power over pulling stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and
You
then
probably skipped this long
yeah,
part
because
that
we
you
read
read.
that. Then the did I read? I'll read this next one though.
Yeah.
Durable layers to body, no conventional organs, irregular biology, tissues mend from the inside out, layers expanding to fill wounds and integrating into surrounding structures. Not human. Not human, never was human. No vulnerable organs. Hyperdurable tissues. Simple organs exist at core of torso where there is highest amount of surrounding tissues. Optimal thickness layer and narrowness of upper body parts at upper arms just before the shoulder joint, upper thighs just before the hip joint. So
Optimal thickness.
yeah, he listen, Leviathan's thick, but
Yeah,
but
but in very strange places.
yeah. He's only thick in the trunk mostly. Um but
In the neck.
the vulnerable parts for him are to